We're continuing Perek Dal Halacha Aleph, section B. We have just slaughtered the par in the white garments. The Kohen Gadol did it after he had made the lottery on the two goats, and he places the blood on the fourth level of the Heichol, the entranceway to the Heichol outside. Now, roivad means a row of stones, because each step was made of stones and it was quite wide, and therefore that person, one of the Kohanim, would then stand on the fourth level, and he would. The question is which was the fourth from the bottom or the fourth from the top? And we're not sure. It can't be at the very level of the Heichol, because it says no one was allowed to be in there. Couldn't be the level of the Heichol itself, because no one was allowed to be in Oil Moed or near it when he went inside. Therefore, it had to be lower down. He would take the fire pan, and he would take fire from the outside mizbeach, from the fire pile that was closest to the west. The fire which is on the mizbeach in front of Hashem, the closest to the doorway, and that's the western side. The Yored would go down with his fire pan. Here, it's on the step that was in Yuma. It says on the fourth step of the Azorah. And Toys Yonta says that obviously the Rambam did not have this text, because it would seem that he would put it up on the very top. But the Yerushalmi would seem that we're talking about that same step upon which they were mixing the blood from the par towards the ulam. Furthermore, they question that the Rambam changes the text of the Mishnah that wrote he would push ashes away side to side till he would get the coals that have been mostly consumed but still have fire with them. Taisus Yontif says from this we see he didn't have that in the Gemara as a text either. Now, the Ketores Shebachol Yom, by the Ketores of every day, the Rambam writes in Hilchos Yom HaKippurim that he pushes the coals back and forth, side to side, and he takes those coals which are basically consumed. And by Tumas Hadeshin, every day he writes that he pushes the coals back and forth, and he takes from those coals that were burned completely, and then he would go down to the earth. So it could be that that's why he doesn't even mention it again here. So the Teiz Yonda wants to say that the coals and the three different types, factorias of every day, he would take from coals that were a little bit burnt, that are not about to become ash. For Tumas Hadeshin, he would take from those coals that were totally nearly ashes, so that it'll have the ash when he takes it off the Mizbeach to cleanse the Mizbeach. And the coals for the incense of Yom Kippur, which was in Kodesh HaKadoshim, he would take anything that he had, because the incense of Yom Kippur was very, very thin. They went through it quite a few times, and because the Kohen Gadol should not have to work too hard, they didn't require him to seek after those which are more consumed, and certainly not for the inner ones, but he takes from whatever comes to hand. Now, Avodah Yisrael explains the Rambam's opinion that Pekteros and every day, when Tumas Hadeshin, you have to take from the Yecholim, which are consumed. For Pekteros of Yom Kippur, you can take from coals that are still burning. as long as there's no fire, actual fire. And that would seem to be the opinion of a lot of commentaries, Rishonim, the early ones. And therefore, it's exact that Rambam writes that he goes into the fire, that only a fire calls it a fire, and they don't have the flame, but you can see that they were fiery. Now they brought out the vessel which we would put the incense into, and another vessel full of incense, which had been refined and refined. He would take a handful between his two hands. He put his two hands into it, and in Maria he points out, the Gemara says that they brought out this vessel to hold the incense and the fire pan. The Rambam just writes a vessel. It doesn't say a fire pan, because Keteris was very, very thin. It was very well done. It was refined. The Kiyaz Mishnah says the source of this is in Yuma 43b. The Gemara says in the Mishnah that every day the incense had been made very fine. And today it's fine of the fine. Rashi explains they would bring it back, as we say every day in the Karbonis on every Yom HaKippurim, to the grinding place, and there they would do it again. In the Griz, the Rova Brisk writes that in this extra refinement, you keep the mitzvah that it says in the Torah. It has to be especially fine. When he takes his handful, he doesn't do it he doesn't crush it together, neither does he leave it very sparse above his hands. Tefuvois. So Rashi explains a little bit above his hands, like the Mishnah says, al da'atfut atfuch, and that it's just because it's in his hands. The measure was dependent upon the Kohen Gadol's hands. If he had large hands, it was a large measure. If he had small hands, it was small hands. You would take that incense which his hands received. He would put them into the cup. Mikorkis brings the question to the Gemara: why does he need a cup? What does he need this vessel for? Since the Torah doesn't mention it. And he answered, how will he bring it in? He will take the Keteris in his two hands. He can't bring in the fire pan. And to go first with the fire pan and then afterwards with the incense, because it says you have to bring them both together at one time. And to say they should bring in the fire pan while it's sitting on his hands, and I was carrying it in his hands, because how will he put it down when he go into the Holy of Holies? And to grab the handle of the fire pan with his teeth and to put it on the floor on the Even Shasiyah, you can't do that, because it would be very it's not a proper way to do so. That even before a king, one does not do it with one's teeth. Certainly not so before Melech Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, you have to bring it with the vessel, so you can carry one in one hand. He would hold the incense in his right hand, and he would hold the fire pan in his other hand, just like the Nesiim brought the Keteros B'kaf. And we find that actually the Nesiim at the time of the dedication of the Mishkan brought the incense in a kaf, as it says, kaf ha'chaz zo'omlei Keteros. He explained, the Rambam says, usually anything done with the left hand nullifies the service, b'dam ha'kodeshim. When it comes to the blood of kodeshim, v'shar avodas, any other thing which is considered a service. And therefore, hayom adin, It should, according to the halacha, this halacha, it should be proper that he should take the fire pan in his left hand, and he should take the incense in his right hand. Because it was very heavy, and it's also hot, and he wouldn't be able to hold on to it till the Orain. Because the Mishnah questions, how could you bring the kavak tails with smile? If you halacha with smile is possible. He explains that why it's only midrabanan, and therefore, since here there's no possibility he has to carry two things, they permitted him to carry it in his left hand. Because Yontif says that all the words of the Kesef Mishnah is by bringing, but receiving down, he would admit also that you can't. It's possible in a Torah b'smoil. He also answers that that's only if you bring it when there's a possibility to do it with the right hand, but in Yom Kippur, that he has to carry the vessel that holds the incense and also the Machon, he can't do it one after the other. Therefore, he has to do it with his left hand. You have to say that the Torah permitted it to do it with the left hand. Chaim Alevi, he explains that according to the Rambam, bringing the Torah of Yom Kippur into the Kodesh HaKadoshim is considered avodah, because it says v'huva mibeis laparoichos, he has to bring it. It says it on the posuk, and since there's an obligation, therefore it's considered an avodah. But taking the Torah a whole year, we don't find that it's called avodah. As Rabbi Chaim points out, that the Rosh Masechet Tomid is of the opinion that the Torah of a whole year is also an avodah. The bringing of it is an avodah, and therefore has to be done with the right hand.